有雲，衣食住行。隨着時代嘅進步，人類對住嘅要求越嚟越高。設計師YUKIO與你暢談室內設計心得，為你介紹流行嘅設計風格，同你一齊築自室。
Hello， 歡迎收睇第44集築自室，我係 YUKIO，
我係 Natalie。
原來今個禮拜先係44集，上個禮拜係43集啫，啊，真係快樂不知時日過啊！咁上個禮拜有講過啦，咁啊上個禮拜就講顏色啊嘛，係咪？咁啊跟住後尾咧，我就話今個禮拜到底仲講唔講得一集好咧？跟住都係諗下，即係想成個 series 好似圓滿啲。咁我哋就講埋呢集咧，就講燈光都係室內設計為主嘅。
就 round up 晒成個。係
啊，咁啊呢4個 series 就真係好似教書咁樣啦。啊！你有冇進步到咧？你覺得？我
梗係有啦！我覺得係呢個節目裏邊進步得最多嘅應該係我。唔知
白糖有冇進步 ？Hello， 白糖。
Hello。
咁咦？今日係阿 Nell 生日喎。係啊。我發覺原來好多人喺
前幾日係你生日喎。
琴日咯係。原來發覺好多人都喺呢個月份生日。上個禮拜阿仙人生日。係啊。證明有才華嘅人都係呢段時間生日。都係10月。係冇錯。咁啊嗱，講燈光就成日都講啦，即係其實有兩個範疇啦，基本上兩個大範疇。第一個就係自然光啦 ，which is 即係太陽光啦。其實每一日我哋都見到嘅嘢啦。係。OK， 另外一個就係講緊一啲普通嘅燈光，一啲附屬性啲嘅燈光啊。啊！出邊好熱鬧，唔知點解個。咦係喎。咁啊，跟住咧，講咩咧？搞到我唔記得咗。太熱鬧啦！其實我哋嘅燈光都好 hot 嘅。係燈光。咁啊，跟住咧就其實過往幾集咧，亦都有提過，其實光線係好重要噶嘛。即係冇咗光線，基本上我哋就分唔到大細前後，即係你黑麻麻個地方咁，你全部嘢都係 flat 㗎咯，即係。全部嘢都係 flat 㗎嘛。咁啊，跟住我哋以前亦都有講過話，其實即係日光對於人體係點樣 react 啦？即係譬如好正常，你嗰個生理時鐘嘅 system 就係你朝頭早你就會做嘢。即係點解朝頭早要做嘢？就係因為見到太陽嘅時候，其實你 energetic 啲，同埋你對於自己，即係你會活動係強啲嘅。即係對於你成個身體機能。咁然後喺夜晚咧，就自然就係真係一個休息嘅時間。係啊，同埋其實如果喺朝頭早嘅時候，即係你個空間唔夠燈光嘅話，個人都好抑鬱㗎嘛。係啊，即係你自己都覺得即係點解人哋話落雨天就好抑鬱咁，就真係因為即係一個正常有陽光嘅時間咧，你冇咗陽光咧，你就會覺得好似好 blue 好慘喎，唔知做乜鬼咁樣。要聽翻啲 sad 啲嘅音樂。係啊，咁啊跟住咧就變咗，即係亦都講過點解北歐啊一啲即係唔係經常見到日光嘅地方，點樣去影響心情啊？有啲橙色嘅長身嘅。冰島又點樣即係自殺率又高，即係呢啲都係同燈光有關嘅。OK， 咁就嗱，我哋先睇第一條片先。咁呢條片咧都係解釋一下到底自然光啦，對於人體有啲咩影響。咁啊可以先睇片。
Light is much more than something that simply lets you see. It affects the way we feel and directly influences our moods. Expressions such as feeling in the dark or being in a black mood, or of course, seeing the light, are essential for our understanding of the planet. As a species, we now spend more time indoors than ever before. In fact, for some of you, that's as much as 90% of your day.
We're very sensitive to the amount of light that's in our environment. We find gloomy rooms difficult to live in. We don't see as well in them, and that makes us feel uncomfortable. It may be something very primeval. There might be a spider hidden under the bookcase, as far as we're concerned. If you're in a light environment, you tend to be happier. You can see better. You tend to be more comfortable. And that's because it's what we need to survive.
The Italians have the most fantastic expression. A house where daylight doesn't enter is a house where the doctor will soon come. Some houses like this so elegantly and successfully maximize daylight, but it wasn't always like that.
嗱，其實一開始咧，點解會揀即係呢個節目咧？咁啊，當然其實本身阿 Owen 都 cover 得好好啦，同埋即係其實英國咧嗰個 建築物同埋嗰個氣候其實都幾似香港啊。當然英國會落雪，
更加凍啲啦，
香港唔會啦，係咪？咁其實即係好多時呢4集裏面好多時都會 focus 咗喺英國嘅住宅啦。咁但係其實有啲喺香港嚟講都適合用嘅，我覺得，因為譬如我哋香港以前嘅唐樓都係即係正正方方一棟，跟住前面有一排窗，咁於是咧就好多時就淨係屋企嘅某即係可能客廳嘅位置先會有陽光。咁但係因為多數都係長條形啦，咁去到個尾嘅時候咧，通常就會暗啲嘅。咁即係同我哋而家嘅好多住宅基本上都差唔多嘅。即係我哋而家啲住宅都係，譬如你客廳有窗。但係去到飯廳嘅位置就未必會真係間間屋都有窗。通常
好多都係咁。
又或者 even 都有窗，嗰隻窗都愛嚟係做對流，就 rather than 真係哇，你會見到有太陽光。
同埋其實每一邊佢就算真係每一邊都有窗咧，你都唔係每一邊都光㗎嘛，始終東南西北嘅問題。
冇錯，咁啊佢頭先亦都有講過，即係咁樣嗰個太陽點樣影響人哋嘅 mood 啊。
即係唔夠光就成日有醫生要嚟探訪你屋企。
係冇錯，同埋始終都係即係見到陽光係開心啲嘅。雖然我自己嗰間即係我自己屋咧，就經常都會落窗簾。咁但係個原因係因為我有少少日夜顛倒嘅關係啫。咁同埋我朝頭早即係朝頭早又唔喺屋企啦。咁但係譬如夜晚可能瞓，第二朝瞓可能去到9、10點咁樣，9點10點鐘，我又唔想俾啲陽光會影響到睡眠。
我反而其實係好靠個陽光去叫醒我喎，我成日都覺得。因為如果唔係咧，即係你落雨天咧係會即係瞓晏咗㗎，我係真係會。
因為我即係譬如以前讀書做嘢，即係讀書嘅時候要通頂，我就一定要間房係長期好黑嘅，唔係即係我一定唔可以見到陽光，即係去呃自己係其實都未夠一日嘅，未夠一日嘅，你明唔明？即係未到天光。即係
你嗰個 time zone 同大家係調轉咗嘅，
係唔同咗個 time zone。好啦，咁啊跟住嗱當然係照過往一樣啦，佢又有間 show flat 啦，即係佢一定要去點樣去 tackle 個 model house 啊。咁但係其實不如先睇咗個 model house 先，因為我相信其實我而家問你有啲咩可以改善得到，你都已經可以答得到㗎啦。有幾個禮拜之後，我哋先睇個 model house 先。
Daylight can be a problem for a lot of houses. Because the majority of us live in houses built before the last war, built for another generation, they are, on the whole, dark and often badly lit spaces. Houses like this. You know, this house is so typically Victorian. It's got a front door facing north and a back door facing south, which means that, I mean, pity the poor rooms at the front. Look, the daylight is so feeble. So how can we maximise the light in here? There are architectural elements around the window that can be used in our favour. These slanted flanks will actually direct and funnel light into the room, which is good. But of course all of this big scary secondary glazing is absorbing an enormous amount of light. One of the most straightforward things you can do if you want to maximise light in a room is make sure there's not too much going on around the window. Let the light come through as uninterrupted as possible. A big mirror in here would make a huge difference, particularly right slap bang there. That print is very, very interesting. Look at it. It's all about the effects of light. I think the people that live in here are aware of the fact that this is a very dark room. And that picture's become almost like a window through into a bright, sunny space. I want to make this their bright, sunny space. In fact, the changes in here can be effected without even flicking a switch. Please walk this way. Here in the modern extension, there are these large roof lights which are creating very intense puddles of sunlight in the middle of the floor, whilst the corners are going almost black in shadow. So, opposite problems. Arctic at the front, Caribbean at the back. Here, I've got to redistribute the light and balance it. At the front, I've got to try and find more light from somewhere. Okay, so having too much light in a room in this country is a pretty unusual problem to have. The question I'm so most frequently asked is how can daylight be accentuated? The British weather has so much to answer for.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
If we relied solely on the sun's rays in Britain for illumination, we'd actually spend rather a lot of time in the dark, because most British light is ambient, filtering through overcast skies, which either sneaks through a window directly or gets bounced or reflected off a building, tarmac or grass. So that means that what's going on outside the room has a huge impact on the quality of light inside the room. Obviously, the sun's rays change throughout the year, and really clever, swatty clever designers build that into a design scheme to account for seasonal variation.
我而家又開始咁樣坐。
係啦，我哋個個而家開始咁樣坐。
跟住呢度隻腳仔咁樣。
啲角度係。
咁啊頭先啊睇咗佢嗰間屋咧，其實有兩 part 啦，一 part 就係客廳啦，係咪？咁客廳嗰 part 就即係話啊，你有隻窗，咁但係嗰隻窗基本上就爆晒光，咁基本你就變咗其餘嘅位置，即係點樣可以去 reflect 啲 light 去其餘嘅位置啦 ？OK。咁啊，廚房就係飯廳嗰邊就非常爆光啦，
係啊，好光猛啊！
跟住上面又有天窗啦，咁但係去到煮嘢食嗰邊，即係真係廚櫃嗰邊就變咗冇燈乜滯啦。
因為都已經唔需要啦，係嘛？其實
都唔會嘅，某時夜晚嚟講都真係暗。但係你
煮嘢食嘅時候，通常你個 stove 好多時個抽油煙機嗰度都會有燈嗰啲㗎嘛。
係抽油煙機會有燈，同埋新式嘅廚櫃個頂即係吊櫃嘅底好多時都會加燈，咁呢啲係即係新式嘅就會咯，以前就唔會嘅。
哦，以前係。
咁就咁好啦，咁啊俾你估下啦，即係譬如其實都唔使點估啦，即係你見到佢後邊個飯廳客廳後邊咪有幅畫嘅，咁佢已經自己講咗話，即係嗰個人擺幅畫喺度，其實都可以 reflect 到一啲 light 啦。
係啊係啊。
咁其實我哋有講過，譬如上次講顏色嘅時候，亦都有講過嘅，譬如用地氈定係木地板會多啲光啲啊！我哋會
木地板
係啊，即係一個 polish 啲或者光 matte 面嘅木地板就能夠 reflect 多啲 light 啊！咁咧其實即係亦都係一樣點樣可以將啲燈光即係太陽光射咗落去你嘅地板之後，就可以反去其他位置。
但我覺得最有趣其實係可以借用埋你屋企出邊啲草咯。
都有作用嘅，即係你點樣令到嗰啲燈係即係陽光落咗去，即係因為 diffuse 翻出嚟。
但係佢呢一個 theory 會唔會淨係可以喺即係春天同埋夏天先 apply 到嘅咧？即係你其他日子可能啲草係真係唔係綠色咁樣嘅嘛？
我諗你都啱嘅，但係有啲係常綠噶嘛，草會唔會枯嘅咩？
冇咁綠咯。
OK， 係咯，係咪？
未至於會變咗
落雪嘅時候，你係唔會，你啲草應該咁
又係落雪嘅時候，你雪又係白色，再 reflect 翻入去啊，
係啊，同埋你頭先都幾得意，見到最尾咧，佢有間屋咧，咁個 model house， 跟住佢就畫晒啲箭嘴啊，即係佢真係分析一下到底嗰啲陽光係點樣入嚟，即係譬如冬天嘅陽光咧，即係如果你係冬天嘅陽光，嗰太陽係會高位啲嘅，咁所以佢好多時就會直接射咗落去個窗嘅下邊先，即係喺個窗邊嘅範圍先。咁去到夏天嘅陽光咧，佢就係低位射入嚟嘅，咁佢就會射入啲嗰間屋嘅。咁咧，你頭先見佢嗰幾個箭嘴咧，你真係可以見到，哦，原來啲光咁樣入咗嚟係點樣彈咁樣。好
有一種打緊桌球嘅理論嘅感覺。
冇錯，其實都似係咁樣嘅，即係你都可以有時你去一間屋或者你準備買一間屋嘅時候，其實所以都會 suggest 你話，喂，不如你朝頭早去睇一次，黃昏又去睇一次咁樣，即係你去 feel 一下嗰個地方到底，嗰個陽光係點樣改變。同埋
係成日都話要睇下間屋會唔會西斜啊嘛。
係啦，呢個亦都係一個重點嚟嘅。OK， 咁就跟住咧，去到最尾係咧，差唔多啦。
我哋差唔多夠鐘啦呢一 part。
未仲有5分鐘，因為呢 part 仲有一條片。咁跟住咧，其實咧陽光咧喺唔同嘅地方，其實佢嗱，因為陽光其實光係唔係白色噶嘛。
係啊，
即係光係有個光，即係點解會有彩虹？
黃地色㗎嘛。
唔係點解會有彩虹？就因為即係其實光係所有即係紅橙黃綠青藍紫夾埋一齊就會變咗白色或者少少黃色。咁呢個就係日光。咁但係其實正常嚟講，光係有好幾個，即係有7種顏色㗎嘛。即係啲小學書都知道啦，彩虹有7種顏色啦。咁所以喺唔同嘅地區、唔同嘅天氣或者唔同嘅國家、唔同嘅時間咧，其實佢嗰個陽光都會有少少唔同顏色嘅，咁啊佢就會同你分析一下咧，譬如喺倫敦嗰個光係咩顏色，咁啊同埋世界其餘嘅歐洲地區嗰個陽光係咩顏色，咁我睇埋呢條片翻嚟，我哋再講少少。
Now, you at home can learn nearly as much about how daylight affects a room by simply watching the way the sun moves around. Obviously, it just takes time. It's worth bearing in mind that the quality and colour of daylight varies according to where you live. British light is typically grey, quite different from, say, Southern Europe. The best place to compare British light with other parts of the world is in an art gallery. As an interior designer, I've always found looking at paintings quite valuable. If nothing else, when you look close, the little spots of colour are almost a recipe that the artist has used to achieve the finished effect of creating light. And it does go to show that a south-facing living room in London or Paris is going to have a completely different quality of light to it than a south-facing living room in, say, Rome or Naples. For centuries, one of the most important parts of an artist's job was analysing and then capturing light. In this painting, there's a feeling of lightness and brightness, but it's all very chilly. It's obviously rather northern. In fact, this is Turner's take on Margate. But meanwhile, further south in Avignon, and look, it's beginning to feel a lot warmer, a lot more colourful. And then, for goodness sake, the countryside just outside Rome, and it's a gaudy explosion with blue skies, purple mountains, and dark, richly coloured shadows. So a colour like this, ravishing in the warm, clear light of Naples, is actually going to look really rather muddy somewhere grey and dark in Britain, like Margate. In our north-facing Victorian terrace that gets no direct sunlight in the front at all, I have to be very particular about the colour I choose. It seems quite straightforward to say that colour's going to play a big part, but in fact, there are some colours that are so badly behaved towards daylight, and they're the reds and the oranges and the browns and the blacks. They hold daylight like a sponge, refusing to bounce it back into the room. Whereas other colours, paler colours like pale green, pale blue, pale lilac, they're very good with daylight. They amplify it, they reflect it. There is science at work here. Watch this. Each colour has a particular light value based on the amount of light absorbed or reflected. And remember, light is not white because, as Sir Isaac Newton discovered, light, although it looks white, is in fact made up of red, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet. The spectrum. So, what this means is when light hits, say, a highly saturated red wall, most parts of the spectrum will be absorbed, except the red, which is reflected. And that's why colours like this tend to close a space down. As a rule of thumb, the lighter the paint, i.e. the nearer to white it is, the higher the reflectance value will be. The green I'm thinking about for the Victorian front room has a lot of white added and therefore has a high light value.
係啊，頭先就睇咗，即係原來唔同，即係不過我又有少少質疑嘅，即係譬如嗰個畫家個 mood 係點樣，咁對於佢啲 colour 都會影響噶嘛，即係佢唔一定係完全表達嗰個地方嗰個風景噶嘛，即係會。
即係可能個心情啊，
佢嘅心情，即係如果佢攞張相，可能就會 present 得好啲啊。即係可能喺法國影張相，喺英國影張相，喺北京影張相，啲顏色就會唔同。係啊，不過
英國個天真係好 grey 嘅，成日都其實。係
嘛，所以啲人好失落啊，成日。好
失落，個個好似好緊張咁樣嘅情緒。
所以個個5點鐘就開始出嚟飲酒。
可能係有關。
咁啊嗱，呢節時間差唔多啦，咁我哋翻嚟嘅時候再補充一下。
我精神攰奶奶，有冇嘢俾我差下啲啊？2000日嘅6年根韓國紅心液幫到你，佢再用營養成分達至最巔峰嘅6年根紅心濃縮製成，輕便獨立包裝，撕開即刻飲得，隨時幫你改善血氣、醒腦提神，做嘢自然有心機啦。5天裝試飲都只係159啫，即刻到 MIHK 網店訂翻 set 充電啦！